Hey, Matt, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
So, I know we're talking about social media, and that's obviously something I believe you've been involved with for a long time. So, maybe you can give me a summary of what we're going to be teaching people.
Sure. I started off in social media about 10 years ago. My initial business was doing social media management for small businesses in my community, and that used to entail, finding other people's content and sharing it on their social media accounts, or if they had content, sharing it on their social media accounts. Right. A lot of social media agencies have expanded into like creating content for people and so on, which is something that we kind of do now. And so what happened was for my own business, I stopped kind of doing agency work and I was, building up my other businesses. And I stopped posting on my social media accounts for a number of months, maybe a year where I was just kind of dabbling in it. And I had a lot of followers. I've got a big audience, not a huge audience, but I have an audience. So I thought like, if only I could just be automating these posts so that way there's engagement happening and I drive the conversation to me versus needing to sit down and really manage social media by like trying to engage in other people's content and spark conversations that way. My goal was that my phone or whatever would send me notifications of people responding to me. And so that's what I was initially set out to do. I had this vision of how I could automate this and how I can create multiple buckets or categories of content and basically fill it all up in one go and
Mhm.
then schedule it in an evergreen sort of way. But I couldn't find the tools that could do everything that I wanted. The initial tool that kind of sparked this idea was Meet Egger. I think they were the first person to come up with this idea where you could recycle content. So instead of scheduling a post on a certain date, which I think got really popular when Hootsuite started that, TweetDeck way back in the day,
Mhm.
right? So the idea is that you continuously post the same thing over and over again. And historically in the social media world, I believe the person who popularized that idea was Guy Kawasaki, because he was known to have a lot of followers and he talked at conferences about how he would tweet the same thing more than once,
Mhm.
and he was driving a ton of traffic from it. So that's kind of where I think those ideas kind of came from over the last decade or so. But now there's a lot of tools that are similar to MeetEgger. I'm going to say that they probably pioneered the idea, but there's many tools, maybe half a dozen, maybe a dozen tools that do this. And I finally found one, SocialBee. That's the one that I use, and I plugged it in, and now without me touching my social media, I'm generating between 5 to 10,000 clicks across all of my accounts every month.
Every month. Okay, so before we look at the automation side, what's like the old school way of doing this? Because would it be a case of just opening your phone, Instagram, take a picture, upload it, and then do it manually again? Like how big is the scope of what you're talking about compared to the old way of doing it?
Well, the old originally with scheduling, right? There was always third-party tools that would allow you to schedule, right? Now a lot of scheduling is built into most social media platforms, not all, but most. So the original idea would be like, I will schedule out this week or this month. So when I used to be a social media manager, I would schedule out a week or 2 weeks or whatever at a time. And then I would always, they'd be paying me monthly and I always have to go in and figure out new posts to create.
Just
Then
before you keep going, is that when you say that, do you mean like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook? You'd have one piece of content per day for each for a client. Would that be what it would look like?
uh, something like that. I mean, the frequency of posts and the timing of posts and kind of what's recommended based off of data has changed over the years. So when you
Okay.
say like once a day, I mean that's kind of depends on the platform, but not to get too deep into that. But yeah, usually you would be just like you got to fill up their content with whatever you promise. Hey, I'm you're gonna pay me X amount, and I will post on your Twitter this many times per day, and on Facebook this many times, and so on, right?
Okay.
So then this idea um, of automatic scheduling or like scheduling at the best time or best day automatically came out. There was an app called Timely that did this, and then Buffer built this in. Whereas now you don't have to choose the exact time and day. You just create your post and then just kind of add it to your queue. And then it uses some algorithm, which, may or may not be accurate. I don't know. And it'll just kind of schedule it. So that was kind of like the next level. So now I don't have to choose a time and date or figure out the best time to post. It does it for me. Right.
Okay.
Whereas now it got to the stage where it's like, you could just select, I want to post this category of content. We can talk about the categories afterwards on these times, on these days. And then you just load in 100 or 500 or however many posts you want. And it'll just kind of pull from your collection of content at those scheduled times. And I try to make it so it doesn't repeat the content for at least 4 months. So it's not noticeable to followers that you're sharing the same thing over and over again. I have thousands of posts, right?
So I'd love to talk about how that works, but just one more question before we dive into the how-to of this. What was, back before you did it, what was the kind of the dream vision? Was it more about the traffic you would get, just taking that job off your plate so you didn't have to work? Like, why were you motivated?
So one was I started becoming more introverted, even digitally, where like I didn't feel like I wanted to post or I had an idea and I just wouldn't do it, right? So there's this idea where like I just wanted things out there, and I knew social media is obviously important. I mean, I'm a social media person, right? So I know as a business, you should be doing it, but I was procrastinating it or putting it on the back burner. So I wanted that engagement. So I wanted that idea of I could check my phone, I get notifications, and I could respond to people engaging with my posts, right? But the other part of it was that I wanted to be able to retarget people who clicked on my links. So retargeting, or also referred to as remarketing, is where I could build ad campaigns, right, through Google's network, Facebook's network, and so on. And I could run ads to anybody who clicks on my links, regardless if they're going to my website. So if I were to share content that was on YouTube or on somebody else's blog who's in the same industry, or a news article or whatever, as soon as somebody clicks on one of my links, I could put them into my remarketing bucket. The reason why that was important to me is because the cost of remarketing is substantially less than going to cold audiences. And it's just way easier. I hated dealing with building cold audiences through Facebook ads or Google and so on, and then having to tweak and optimize and so on. What I found right away when I started doing remarketing, just from website visitors or whatever, my campaigns were branding campaigns. They weren't, what you call like direct response and, long copy, right? They were banner ads of my company's logo or my picture with our unique selling proposition on it. And that was it. And what I found when I used to run those ads, I used to spend under $100 a month running those ads, and they were just remarketing people who visited my website, is the response that I got from people who I knew at networking events or online was like, they thought I was a celebrity. They thought I was going on Forbes and running ads on Forbes.com or something, right? So I noticed that my, influence, if you want to call it that, right, like really spiked, but it was only to these people who had engaged with me in the sense of visiting my website. So I wanted to take that and say, anybody who engages with me anywhere online, all of a sudden we can start running these branding campaigns. And we do have different levels of remarketing, but the initial stage is just a branding campaign where they just continuously see your logo on your face. If you ever, anyone listening to this or reading this, if you ever go on, Groupon, they're crazy on remarketing. As soon as you hit their website, everywhere you go, you're going to see Groupon ads everywhere. That's the idea.
Interesting. So I feel like we almost have to do a part 2 here on how you do the remarketing campaigns to go with the social media. I didn't know this. So you're not just automating to take that off your plate as a more, used to be a manual job, or at least it was not manual, but you're really automating it 100% now. But you're not just doing that because you want to share content socially to, meet your audience and get those clicks. You're actually doing it because you're creating audiences to make use of paid advertising campaigns. And like you said, I really like this. It's an important point. You could share someone else's blog post on your social media. If then a person clicks that blog post on your Twitter account, they're then put into a bucket that they like that type of content. So it's a way for you to create audiences you can target that doesn't even require any of your own content at all. It's like you could say, I wonder how many people are interested in, I don't know, how to buy and sell websites. And you can go and grab my article on my blog on that topic, put it on your Twitter. Someone clicks it, that person goes into the remarketing campaign for how to buy and sell websites. And then you could even promote an affiliate product on that subject to that person. And potentially, so you could do all of that without any, not your own product, not your own content,
That's
just
right.
social media automation and retargeting advertising campaigns. So that sounds very powerful. But step one, of course, is automating the social part of this, because then you can build the buckets of people, right? The targeted group. So let's start there, and maybe we should do the part two at some point, Matt, how you do the retargeting. But take us forward then, so I can see your goal pretty clear. But I guess at the beginning you weren't sure how that would all play out. So how did you start the process to begin this test?
Well, initially, sorry, can you review back on what's
The question?
yeah, what's the question exactly?
Yeah. Well, so, you hadn't tested like that. That was an idea in your head. Like, I want to build these groups. I want to automate my social media. But you never done it before. So right at the beginning, if we go back to the very first time you set up this system for automation that you're about to teach us, what was step one? Like, what did you do?
Gotcha. Okay. So what I did was I first chose all of the categories of what I wanted to share.
Okay.
So I was thinking about what's my feed going to look like, because I don't want it to look spammy, right? I want it to look like I hired a social media manager. I'm paying them thousands of dollars per month to go and post valuable content that people are going to engage with, right? What I don't want is to look like I'm just spamming links, because it doesn't work. People will get disengaged from your brand if that's what you do, right? Mm-hmm. So I selected some categories. So for example, you always want to ask questions, right? So people will respond and so on. Like, it creates engagement. Quotes work well. I chose to find quotes that were generic, not quotes from famous people. Now, when I did this initially, this is an important category, and I was really nervous about doing it because I noticed a lot of people who are, these days we call them influencers or whatever, entrepreneurs, that would post things like, always be positive and stay successful, or, some kind of like generic quote like that, right? So I actually hired somebody to go out and find me 100 generic quotes. We now have hundreds, but it started with 100. And I was really nervous about doing it. A lot of people will put those quotes next to their picture and create a graphic on Instagram, which you could do. But what I did was I just took the quote and I just matched up with basically a random picture of me. I found about 100 pictures of me from speaking at events or whatever. Okay. And I kind of put those together. So there was, I had all these questions. And again, I had somebody go out and find questions, lists of questions that had to do with my industry. We could also look on Quora for the most popular questions on your topic. There was actually lists, like people who have lists and stuff like that online you could scrape from. A lot of it I just made up, and I was just kind of like rapid firing. What kind of question could I ask? And again, hundreds of questions. Then there was all of our YouTube videos, all of our blog posts. So this is like our own content, right? And for those, what I would do is I would get the video and the title, and I would create multiple variations for how I would share that. So I would do a minimum of 3. So if I had only 30 videos or 30 articles, from that I would create, call it 90 or 100, variations of those posts, right? And then the other category is that you can import automatically an RSS feed. And so the way that works is that every blog has, well, most blogs back in the day anyways, most blogs have an RSS feed, right? There's a Google Chrome plugin. I don't know the name right now, but basically you can just go to someone's blog, click on, find the RSS feed, and it'll just give you the link to the RSS feed. You could plug that into your social media automation tool. In this case, I'm using SocialBeat. And as soon as that person posts a new article, and this, you could also do this on news sites, anything, right? It'll automatically take the title of the article and the link, and it'll share it. Now, the unique thing that I was looking for is I wanted to tag the person or the brand when I shared their content. So that way, my brand would be on their radar. So there's something that, we do in the marketing world is, joint ventures, affiliate marketing. So what I do is I try to find people who I might want to partner with in the future, plug in their RSS. Now they see me sharing their content every time they publish something new. I reach out to them in a few months and say, hey, I really love your content, whatever, maybe we could work together. That was kind of my intention there. So this one feature that I only have ever seen on SocialBee is this feature called prefix text. And so while you're setting up that RSS feed, you could choose to put text that will go at the end of every tweet. So I would put via their username. So now it's sharing the title of the article, the link via their username.
So they get tagged when that gets posted.
That's right.
So they know about it.
Yeah, they're always seeing that I'm sharing their content. Mm-hmm. So that's some examples of the kinds of categories that we have. We also have, uploading videos natively, so on. So there's a few other kinds of categories, but that's kind of like the core fundamental.
So quotes, questions, just the content from other bloggers who you want to share and also get on their radar so they know who you are by tagging them when you post it. So there's multiple things going on here. You're creating buckets of people. I'm assuming, growing your own social following, because when you share quotes, they get retweeted and shared, which brings a few followers in as well. Was that tied into any kind of specific business goal, like you want to sell something eventually, or is it more just about reaching people and connecting?
Right. So what happens is, like on Twitter, hashtags are important. I found out through doing this as well that hashtags are important on LinkedIn. I've been getting a lot more reach with LinkedIn, and I've actually made new connections with people who said, I saw you share this article, and they connected with me, which I was surprised. I didn't think people were searching hashtags on LinkedIn, but definitely on Twitter, and it does create that, right? I have an established network, so if somebody's just starting off new, it's a lot more challenging to do this strategy. But because I had an established network, there was that kind of growth that does happen. People retweeting, engaging, other people seeing it, right? But if you have no followers, is not going to all of a sudden build your followers.
It's not a magic bullet.
Right. So what was the other part of your question?
Just, was there a specific outcome you were looking for in terms of like selling a product eventually, or is it more just a general exposure type?
So initially when I did it for my own profiles. So I had multiple brands. I built it up for multiple brands. I was thinking it was going to take me a few hours. It took me I'm going to say it took me almost a month, spread out over time, of course, but it probably took me 30 to 40 hours the first time I did it. The second time was about half the time. So it does take a long time because you're building up this huge library of content because you don't want to make it obvious that you're automating, right? You're just trying to create these conversations and this engagement. But my intention was to build my remarketing bucket so that I could put people through, my, I don't know if you want to call it an invisible funnel of some sort.
When you say bucket, you mean like a library of content, right? Sort of?
Well, no, when I say my remarketing bucket, so.
Oh, so sorry, specifically for remarketing, I meant the content you're sharing is coming from a library, and then you're using that content to create the remarketing buckets that way.
That's right.
So you have to think about the library first, because you're you have to know your buckets before you choose the content, right? You almost have to work in reverse that way.
That's right. Yeah, you have to choose what kind of content do I want to share, and then you have to fill your bucket, your library with that content, right? Do the variations, and then also when you're looking at your posting frequency for that category, for me, I try to make it so it doesn't repeat in less than 4 months, right? So that's the other way where you got to figure out how much content you need, for example, based on your posting frequency of that category. There's some math involved.
Let's get really basic first here. We haven't answered one question. What exactly does SocialBee do, and how are you using it?
All right, so SocialBee is just for publishing content, right? You could just schedule content, but I think their specialty really is in the automation aspect of what we're talking about, which is different from tools like Hootsuite. I think Agorapulse is very popular right now. Buffer. These help you schedule content, and they help you engage or manage your engagement, your conversations, and so on. You can even check your DMs and so on in these platforms, right? They're more in social media engagement management platforms as well as scheduling. what I like about Social Bee is that it's very specific to automation, right? Like I can't reply to people inside of it, right?
Right.
Like, and I like that. And I go to the networks themselves to reply to people. So I use just the native apps for responding and so on. But that's what Social Bee, I think, is what's really good about them.
Okay, so it's essentially, just to really dumb this down, you create Twitter tweets, Instagram pictures, LinkedIn articles, or just links to other people's blog posts or YouTube videos. Am I forgetting any other channels? Facebook page, I think. Would you use that as well? Like,
Yeah, so I use my Twitter profile. I use a LinkedIn company profile. It doesn't do a whole lot, right? Facebook pages,
Facebook.
Instagram. I
Okay.
don't. This is
Okay.
not something I do. There's something else I do for Instagram, which I could tell you, but this technique is not specific to Instagram.
Okay. So you've got those social platforms that Social Bee can post to
Yeah,
on your
sorry.
behalf.
Wait, I just gotta back up. The Google My Business, the like Google local listing, you could now publish on there, which
Okay.
really does optimize your Google local listing for any local business. So there as well.
That's cool. Okay. So you've got these external platforms that you own. They're all your company name or personal name. You can use Social Bee to basically take a library of content, stick it into Social Bee in their library, and then you create a calendar that Social Bee will post to these platforms to that schedule, and it will recycle. So a tweet will go once every 4 months to your Twitter account. You determine how that all works. So, but once you've set it up, which by the sounds of things, 40 hours first time, which makes sense because you have to get all the content together, create the calendar, and then I guess you press the play button and it does the work for you. Is that pretty much a summary of how you use Social Bee?
That's right. And now I'm getting more traffic on my social media accounts than I ever have before because it's always going, right? I even post in the middle of the night for people in different time zones. I'm basically posting 24 hours a day.
Can we talk about that? What is your frequency on like, how did you decide? Is it one tweet an hour, one tweet a day, one tweet a week? How do you figure that out?
You know what? There's a lot of studies about best times to post or whatever, right? The best way to really figure it out is to post at a semi-high frequency, specifically on Twitter. You could post once an hour, every 2 hours, something like that on Twitter. It's kind of common. Facebook, I was not sure to go with like, because they have this whole thing with like time decay. Let's not get into it, but they got some algorithms. So I wasn't sure, do I go high frequency on a Facebook page or low? So I actually tried it low on one page and high on the other, and the high beat it out like tenfold.
What do you mean by high and low? What's the difference?
So I went from like, I think it was like 2 posts a week or 3 posts a week on one page.
That's
to
low?
to 3 a day on the other.
Got it.
So higher frequency works. And so I think, once you start posting, then you can go look at your insights on your platform or use a third-party insights tool, and it will tell you when your post had the best performance. It'll tell you when your audience is most engaged and so on. And you can make adjustments based on that. So for the most part, I recommend people just look at the most recent study on best times and days to post, and then, kind of follow that as a guideline. But all those guidelines are based on, you have to look at, I think they're kind of bullshit studies because they're surveying people who live in a specific time zone, and then they're giving you data based on that time zone, and you could have an international audience. So there's a little bit to think about that. So for the most part, I just post multiple times a day, do that for like a month, go back to your insights, and then look at what worked, and then you can decide what you want to do. If you're posting a lot, you notice somebody complaining about it, maybe that's kind of a sign you should maybe make an adjustment. Look at what other people who are really big in your space do. How often do they post? That could be also a good sign. Actually, I was doing that. I was actually looking at pages who had high frequency of posts, and I was actually looking at what times they posted and how long they posted. But for the most part, I think it's mostly guesswork and kind of like adjusting later.
What about the content itself? It sounds like it's almost overwhelming the way you're doing it, because you could pull from any blog, any YouTube video. But then, of course, you've got your own content. So how have you decided the ratio there of your stuff versus anyone else external stuff?
So yeah, I guess what I figured was that people go to social media to get the news, right? So what was really important to me was to share news relevant to my industry. So I was trying to find news about what's happening in the digital marketing space, right? So I think that that is somewhat important, depending on the business and so on. But I think in news, like like actual like daily news, is important. Again, when you post something like that, you're not repeating it, right? You're just posting like, this is what
Mm.
happened today. This is the news, right?
So
Versus
that's an important point. Social B can be one-off posts, not
that's where
just
I talk about the RSS, right?
got it.
Where it's
So
like,
it'll only post the RSS once.
yeah, I could choose to post it once, or I could also choose to repeat it. And there's some settings, but I just
Okay.
post it once. So there's that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I can't remember how I actually said it. There are some people who believe that you should share more of other people's content than your own. I think the opposite. I think most of the content should just be your own content. But if you don't have a whole lot of your own content, there's nothing wrong with sharing other people's content.
Hmm.
Now, I did have to do a lot of research into how to like quickly extract all the titles and URLs and stuff like that, which is pretty technical. I don't think we want to talk about it, but I can tell if you want. But there was some digging to figure out how to, quickly get all the titles of all my YouTube videos and all the URLs. It was like a little bit of a hack, getting all the titles of all my blog posts and all the URLs. I put them all into a spreadsheet, then I duplicate the columns, and then I just start writing out the post and making multiple variations. Sometimes I post the article with a link preview. Sometimes I post it with the image of the thumbnail and then have the text, and the link is in the text. Just again, creating more variations. If you want to get really crazy with it, you could take your blog post and post it on Medium. You could post it on LinkedIn Pulse, and it's on your blog. And now you have 3 different variations there
Mm.
too, because they're going to different platforms. So there's a lot you could do to create more volume of your own content with multiple variations. Um, it's
Okay.
really just a matter of strategy what you want to do there.
But once you've done all that, you press play, and then your only job is just to engage with anyone who replies to you or sends you a DM. Is that basically it?
There's that, yeah, and then setting up the remarketing campaigns and having people move through those audiences.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
for
Well,
that.
like that's another topic we'll save for another day. But um, I feel I know as personally a little overwhelmed, and I'm sure the listener is too, because let's face it, there's all these different social platforms. Like you just said, one of your own blog posts, you could be putting it on Medium, using Social B to put a version of it on every single social platform. And that's a big job just for your own one piece of content. So could we maybe, wrap this conversation up with thinking about, let's say someone who's just building their social platform for the first time. They want to automate it from day one because hell, why not, right? It makes a lot of sense. But let's bring it down to a simple, few steps to make use of Social B. And maybe we can talk about the other side of this too, which is, yeah, you can use Social B, but you still have to source content. And I like that the fact that you can say, use anyone else's content to start with, but at some point you're going to write a blog post or you're going to upload a video, and you're going to want to make use of that as well. So you said you got help from other people. So let's assume that people want to do this as efficiently as possible and not necessarily do it all themselves. So how would you recommend, now that you know what you know, now that you've had other people help you, if I was just getting started, I wanted to get the basics set up, maybe in 10 hours. I don't want to spend 40 hours. I want to do it 2 hours a day for a week. What would you recommend people do?
So this is always best for people who already have content, right? So here's the category. I actually just have a note here of like what the categories are, right? So one is that you're going to want to have 100 questions. You're going to want to have 100 quotes. If you want to use like quoting famous people and whatever, that's fine too. Or you could use the generic life advice quotes, right? Because that breaks up your news feed, so it's not all a bunch of links, right? So you got 100 quotes, you got 100 questions. You could have a category called fun, where you could post GIFs and jokes, memes, stuff like that if you wanted, right? Then you have a category for your blog posts. We already talked about kind of how you might do that. You could have a category for your videos, let's say your YouTube videos. You could have a category for promotions. So one thing that I have yet to set up, but I want to, is on Twitter, having posts that promote people to go and connect with me on LinkedIn and to like my Facebook page and to follow me on Instagram and YouTube. And then on Facebook, the same thing, you know, promoting the other channels. So you could have like a promotions bucket.
That could be
Right?
product promotions too, if you have something for sale, right?
That's right. That's the other one too, is then, yeah, promotions for selling your products. That could be another one, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can call the other bucket like the follow me elsewhere bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you have the RSS feed. So you have the RSS feed for potential partners for your business. We call them like joint ventures, affiliates, whatever you want to call that. Then you could have the other RSS feed that publishes news for your industry.
Got it.
Right. So those could be kind of your set buckets that you might want to work with. And then what I did initially is I hired somebody to just go out and find me a list of questions and quotes and so on.
Where do you hire people for that?
You could, I mean, I just
What do you,
do that. But I mean, any VA could do that.
okay. Where would you, like, if you had to find someone right now, where would you go?
I mean, I would probably just post on Facebook and say, hey, I got a task. I want you to find me other questions. Who wants to do it for $20? Something like that.
So clearly you don't need a set of specific skills for this. Anyone could do this.
Yeah. If you're like, if anybody tries right now to go on Google, there's people who have already curated lists. Like go and look up list of motivational quotes or whatever, right? Like there's so many, right?
And you can just steal them. You can just use them. You can copy them and put them in your Twitter.
I mean, you don't want to take like an Albert Einstein quote, take off his name, and then use it as your own. Like, I'm not talking about that. If you want to post, because people do post quotes and say, Albert Einstein or whoever, said it, right? I personally don't like that content, so I don't use it, right? I try to make my feed what I would want to see, what I follow this page, that's kind of my idea, right? So what instead is I took the kind of the quick motivational, you could do it, that sort of stuff. And those are generic, and yes, you could just steal them because it just, it's not nobody's thing. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Then what? 10 hours. I've only got 10 hours, remember? So that would be my buckets, and I'd hire one person to fill them all with content, and obviously you'd know which RSS feeds to use. Then what do? Just buy Social Bee, and then what?
So yeah, when you got Social Bee, what you have to do is somewhere in there, you go to bulk upload or whatever, and there's a spreadsheet, a CSV file you download that has specific columns that you need to use for when you're uploading your content. So you need that spreadsheet. I use Google Sheets because that way it's collaborative for the people I'm working with.
Okay.
And I create tabs in the Google Sheet. Each tab is one of the categories. And then I put everything inside there. For each of the categories.
Okay.
And then once it's all loaded up, then you can just download each tab of your spreadsheet as its independent CSV file. Then when you're in Social Bee, I mean, they have, instructions, and they have support, but then you would just basically create the category in Social Bee. Then you would upload your CSV into it, and then it would all go there. Once you've uploaded all your content and all your categories that you wanted, then you would open up your calendar and you basically click on a time slot and you say, on this day at this time, post from this category. Then you go to the next time slot and maybe separate, let's say ballpark on Twitter, post every 2 hours, 24 hours of the day, post maybe 3 times a day on Facebook and LinkedIn, and post once a day on your Google My Places. Those are the primary.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's probably it then, isn't it? Really, that's a starting point. That will do a whole lot more than doing anything manually.
It will. I mean, it really does take away from, like, I think the value of what you're getting with the amount of content, it's, you'd have to hire somebody for probably $3,000 a month to do that, right? To post that much.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's I could definitely talk more, but I can
well, well, no, I'd love to. Yeah, I don't want to get too bogged down in the technicalities, like you said before, with the headlines and let's just start with the basic technicality of using Social Bee for people to figure that out. So I think that's a good endpoint. We definitely should do a part two though for the actual ad campaigns you run after all of this to see how that works, because that would be an interesting addendum to this one. And a different skill set completely, obviously, retargeting. So, that's cool. But Matt, where can people go to find you? Any kind of websites you want to shout out?
Yeah, it's mattasafan.com is where I'm kind of doing my agency work around this. And if you want to see it in action, it's on. I have three separate businesses. One is the Matt Asafan brand. The other one is the Web Friendly brand, and the third one is the Internet Masterminds brand. So if you look at any of the social profiles for those three brands, you will see this strategy in action.
Okay, very cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to share with us.
Awesome. Thank you.